Ohio State's win over Penn State could be the turning point in the Buckeye season.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Buckeye fans, to your Tuesday edition of Locked On Buckeyes, your daily Ohio State podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast, and today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Simply visit FanDuel.com to get started. During today's show, we'll dive into how Ohio State fans should view the first CFP rankings that come out tonight, as well as something that we saw on Saturday that is contagious. But first, Ohio State's team right now could use this past Saturday's win over Penn State and use it as the turning point in the season. It's a possibility that will be what Saturday is viewed like down the road, but we don't have enough data to say that right now because it's only one game. What we need Ohio State to do on Saturday against Purdue, the following weekend against Northwestern, and then so on throughout the year is be physical every single weekend. And I'm not saying you got to run for 300 yards or pass for 300 yards. I'm not saying those statistical numbers need to happen. All I am saying is the mindset Ohio State had, the physicality they had all four quarters needs to show up every single day. Not just against a good team and a top 5 team in Penn State, but also at home against Purdue, who is a bad team. Also on the road in the historic Wrigley Field, which is against Northwestern, which is a bad team. Especially against Indiana, who is trying to prove they deserve to be at the table with the big boys in a few weeks. Bring that physicality because you're going to need to. You have to that day to beat Indiana. I can't believe I'm saying that, but that's where we are. The following week against Michigan, bring that physicality. You need to, because Michigan is going to try to do everything they can to spoil your season. And with them trying to play spoiler, what can you do? You're already more talented. And then if you're more physical, baby, it's night-night. It's over. Michigan can't get anything done. But that's what you have to do. Be physical every single snap, every single day. And the fact that we got that against Penn State when a lot of people didn't expect it, when Ohio State had a new offensive line against that good front seven that Penn State has, when Ohio State was trying to figure some things out defensively and change some things up on the fly, and they were able to do that, that is something Ohio State can build upon. And the way that we'll be able to see them build upon it, what do they do against Purdue on Saturday? Just go to the first game that's coming up on the schedule. What do they do? Is it another performance like against Nebraska? Lackluster, like guys don't want to be there. As I believe Zach Borden said, it kind of looked like or felt like a funeral on the sidelines in that Nebraska game. Maybe that's it. Or maybe we get more of what we got this past Saturday, as Zach Borden also said when he was there in Happy Valley, that there was a moment in the game that the offensive linemen after the series were going to go over and sit down on the bench like normal. But then a couple guys, one of them being Fryer, yelled at everybody, and they didn't sit down. They went on the sideline and cheered on the defense. I mean, this is stuff that you need, that you want to see, that you want to see. Hey, we know we can sit down and relax a little bit and get a little bit of coaching. But what's more important right now is us cheering on our boys, cheering on our brothers that are out there grinding and trying to grind out a win, be more physical than Penn State. That's what needs to happen. That's why it can be a turning point, because what we saw on Saturday was so abnormal, especially for a Ryan Day team, that you get that in the middle of the season when if you lose that game, the season could spiral. I'm not saying it was going to, but you could realistically say a 10-2 Ohio State team still gets into the playoff, assuming they win out. They still get into the playoff, but who's to say they're going to win out? They could beat Purdue. They could beat Northwestern. They could lose to Indiana. They could lose to Michigan. And you're looking at an 8-4 team. That ain't getting into nobody's playoff. And that's going to be one of them things where we're having serious conversations about Ryan Day, about this team, about the direction of the program. We would be having those conversations here on this show. But instead, we got something completely different. Things that we have been saying that Ohio State needs to do for years. literal years. Those of you that have been around here for quite a long time know that we have had the conversation on this show, especially with my guy Jeff Hunt, who is a frequent contributor of the show. We have been saying be more physical, show you want to be there, where's that fire, play angry, play fast. We have been saying this for years, and it's not saying that it doesn't happen occasionally, but we always look at some teams in the South. I'm not saying no names and saying they're doing things Ohio State isn't. Why? We don't know, because it's Ohio State. But what we got on Saturday was players that viewed that Block O like it represents the Ohio State University, and they play phenomenal ball, man. I mean, we can highlight different guys. The one thing I want to highlight is number 75, because he's smack dab in the middle of the guy who took his spot, and he's in the spot of the guy who's to his left. So he's in a very peculiar situation, because he lost a spot to one guy, and the guy who he's replacing is bumped out a little bit in the new spot. So he knows the game. He knows Ohio State. He knows the offense. He knows all of these things. But he's thrust right here and said, hey, you got the experience. Go out there and get the job done. A lot of pressure was put on Carson Hinzman over the weekend. I think pressure that needed to be put on him because they trusted him, but a lot of pressure was put on him. Hadn't really played much this year. He played some early in the year, but when it came to the right guard, left guard spots, he was never the first guy up when Donovan Jackson was hurt, or that could be the backup at right guard. In the season, it was Austin Sareveld. A lot of confusing things, though, but one guy that stepped up that might allow this to be the turning point in the season is Carson Hinzman, because I think he understood the assignment. Now, a lot of guys understood the assignment on Saturday, but he specifically understood the assignment, and all five guys up front realized if we want to win this game, we got to run the ball. And it's not just run the ball for 2 here, 4 here, yard and a half here. No. We got to run the ball. And as a former offensive lineman, what's the one thing that I love to do is run block. Sounds weird, doesn't it? Get in a 3-point stance, go right there and push a man against his own will, and you know that he is trying to get behind you. You know where the play is going, but you still got to follow your steps. You got to follow your footwork, got to follow what you know. And the guy you're trying to push, he's trying to push you backwards. You're trying to push him backwards. And you enjoyed that? Absolutely, I enjoyed that. But there are times that things got a little difficult, that our backs were against the wall. I remember one game freshman year, Decatur Central, 0-0 in the final minutes of the fourth quarter. We ended up winning that game 6-0. But what happened? Baby, we had to dig deep. We had to do something that we really hadn't had to do all season long. We were undefeated, trying to keep our unblemished record, and we had to dig deep inside of ourselves and look out there and say, okay, we know what's happened. We know what y'all have been able to do. We're not making sure we don't score, but we are the team that wants to win. We have the will to do this thing. That's exactly what happened freshman year. That's also what happened on Saturday. If you keep that same mindset, I ain't said that thing in a long time, but it deserves to be right here. If Ohio State keeps that same mindset and realizes that this is what they have to do every single week, and they find a way to accomplish it every single week, we're going to be talking about a team that looks back to that trip to Happy Valley and says that's the turning point in the season. It's too early to know if it is, because we don't know how Ohio State's going to play against Purdue this Saturday. But if they do what we think they should do, they're just going to build upon what they did against a really good Penn State team. Also, what should happen that we learned from Penn State is Ohio State should pick up on something that happened in that day, let that thing spread across the entire team, because that thing was contagious. This episode is brought to you by Roy. Hey, Ohio State fans, it's time to recognize the Roy Player of the Week. So far this season, we've pulled over $20,000 to support players on Roy. Microdeposits lead to massive change. With the Roy app, you can direct your support to the athletes you love, ensuring that all funds go to the specific player you choose. Unlike collectives, you know exactly where your support is going, and you even receive exclusive content like personal videos and updates after the season. The best part, it's risk-free. If the athlete transfers or doesn't deliver the content, you get your money back. This week, I'm supporting Quinn Sean Judkins. I just pitched in $100, and I'd love for you to join me. Even $10 makes a difference. Let's show Quinshawn Judkins the love and keep him connected to our school. Remember, pay today, celebrate tomorrow. Your support sets your team up for success. Download Roy now and join the NIL game with no subscriptions and no fees. And be sure to check us out on Instagram, Facebook, and X at Roy_return on you for more info. Roy, support the players, change the game. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, and it's all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel Sportsbook app to get in on the action. Thank you for making Locked On Buckeyes your first listen or maybe first watch of the day. Ohio State's team on Saturday not only can use that game against Penn State as a turning point, but they also, the energy they had is contagious, and that bad boy can spread like a wildfire. And that mindset too, the energy and the mindset, those two things are contagious. And think back to, now I talk about Carson Hinsman, we can talk about Will Howard, but think about the entire team. A big reason why this might be a turning point is, one, it was needed to be a turning point. Something had to change for Ohio State to accomplish their goals. But also, number two, this team wasn't playing consistently with the energy they needed. They weren't consistently fired up. They weren't consistently playing angry or playing fast. They weren't consistently doing all of those things. And what we saw on Saturday was a team that had energy all day. They had fire all day. They had the right mindset all day. They had anger all day. I mean, I saw Quinshawn Judkins being able to chirp back at Penn State defenders, and I'm thinking, we've been looking for that all year. We've been waiting for this moment all season long. We have been waiting for Ohio State's guys to show up and show out and say, I know what we had been doing. I know the talent. I understand the offseason hype. All that's great. All that's cool. Let's get between these lines and bust some heads. We have been waiting for now. I'm not saying they haven't been doing that at some points in time. So I'm not going to sit here and say, well, Ohio State 7-1, but the record's kind of flawed because, well, they ain't busting nobody's heads or they ain't doing this, that, or the third. I'm not sitting up here saying that. I won't do that because that would be foolish. What is not foolish is that Ohio State is not only talking about some stuff, they're actually doing it. And that makes me happy, man. It makes me very, very happy that Ohio State is playing angry and playing fast and playing the way they need to. Because if they went this entire season, and I think the 2022 year post-bye week was one of the years where things kind of spiraled, which was another loss of the team up north. I don't normally call them that, but y'all, that annoyed me, man. Like that year, that Iowa game, Ohio State blew them out 54-10 in 2022. Not sitting up here saying the Iowa game was a fluke. No, I mean, like, it did show some things about Ohio State where you're way more talented than this team. And something still seemed off. We talked about it after that game, and it kept going, it kept going, it kept going. Kind of like 2015. Like 2015, something felt off, and then it kind of reared up its ugly head that night against the Spartans, where that kicker did that weird celebration. It kind of annoyed me, man. It really, really did. But this year, I won't say it felt like 2015 or it feels like 2022, but something definitely felt off. But when we hear coaches say, our guys are going to play angry, they're going to play fast, and they're not really doing those things when they say it, it does cause frustration. It causes confusion. But what we know about athletes and about sports and about the competitive nature that these players have, if I am Lathan Ransom and if I am not fired up like I need to be, but Caleb Downs is, he tries to pick me up, I'm going to try to lift up my own spirits and play a little bit harder because my brother, who's literally right beside me, is doing some things that I need to do to win the game. If I'm Quinshawn Judkins and I'm fired up, but then all of a sudden look over and Travion Henderson is not, what do? Just let him go, let him mope, let him just sit there and wallow in his own self-pity. Like, I'm not saying it's self-pity, but If that's what's happening, do I let him do that? No, man, you pick him up. You bring him up with you because your energy is contagious. And Ohio State right now has the energy, and it feels like that even now, early in the week, that the energy has shifted. The energy has shifted in a way that it might be a championship mindset. We don't know that yet. I'm not saying like the only way to know that is for them to win the Natty. I'm not saying that at all. But you can tell a team has a championship mindset when you look at it, when you see it, when you sense it. You can just tell. And the next time we see Ohio State on the field, we'll be able to see if that mindset is exactly the way that it needs to be. Because if it is, what are we going to be talking about? An Ohio State team that gives up no touchdowns once again back-to-back weeks to two Big Ten teams. Okay, so the team is already in the top 10 of some defensive stat categories in the country. Then all of a sudden it gets even better and it gets even better. And then all of a sudden, what might be another big noon kickoff, we're going to talk about that here in a second, against Indiana, we're talking about a team that is ready to go. Now, I was waiting and I was not sure if I was going to do this today, but Ohio State has too many early kickoffs this year. And I don't know the entire, I'm sure I could pull it up here really quickly, the schedule and how many early kickoffs they've had. I know they've had a night kickoff that was on Big Ten Network. That was against, I believe, Western Michigan. And it's very odd that when Fox has taken over and been the main broadcaster of the main Ohio State games, the big time Ohio State games, that we're sitting here in a moment where Ohio State isn't going to have that many 3:30 or primetime games, and this team is too good to not have that. It's really sad, man. It is really, I definitely miss the days of ESPN and ABC having a tier to the table to broadcast Big Ten games, because a game like this weekend against Purdue, put that thing at 3:30. Like, put it on ESPN at 3:30. Why? Because you can. Now, the difference is you're not going to put Ohio State and Michigan at the same time. I know Purdue is fine playing the night game. I know some people at Ohio State, some people that cover Ohio State, say Ohio State is not cool or they might not be cool doing night games in November. I say, miss me with that nonsense. Trust me. They got do the Browns or the Bengals shy away from night games? No. They would gladly be on Sunday Night Football or Thursday Night Football or Monday Night Football. Why? It's a national stage. You want that as a player. You want to play in front of the entire country. And if you're Ohio State, yeah, you want to be on a national network. But this weekend's games, I think, is more on a regional network, not on national. Now, you can still get the Big Ten Network, which is where the Purdue game is going to be on some streaming services. But it's really odd. Ohio State, I'm going to count them here quickly on the show because I know the game against Purdue is at 12. The Northwestern game the week after is at 12. The Michigan game's at 12. My gut says Big Noon gets the Indiana game. That's going to be at 12. Can we get some more night games, man? Give me some more mid-afternoon games. I mean, if I'm CBS, if I'm Brad Detzler, I am pounding the table saying, look, Fox, I know y'all might want that game. We want that on our airwaves because it's a whole lot bigger of a network and a bigger time slot than 12 noon because that game deserves to be later in the day. Sorry, if you can't tell, I'm a little annoyed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Half of Ohio State's games, so like 6 that I'm counting, are noon kickoffs confirmed. It's probably going to be 7 noon kickoffs because Fox is going to snag up the Indiana game. Just like some of the energy at Ohio State is contagious, what should be contagious is the putting Ohio State in a bigger time slot at a later time slot because it's the Ohio State University, one of the biggest brands in the sport. Do it, man. That could very well be a top 5 matchup. Now, it's weird saying that Ohio State IU is a top 5 matchup, but it might be. Don't put it at 12 noon. Don't do that. You did that to Ohio State, Penn State. Don't do it to Ohio State and IU. Don't do it. Don't do it. But they probably will. What also might happen is some Ohio State fans might get confused about the CFP rankings that come out tonight for the first time this year. Don't get confused. I'll tell you how to view these rankings next. This episode is brought to you by Z-Biotics. Z-Biotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make Z-Biotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. Go to zbiotics.com/lockedoncollege to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use Locked On College at checkout. Z-Biotics is backed with 100% money back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/lockedoncollege and use code lockedoncollege at checkout for 15% off. This episode is brought to you by Billiards Plus. Billiards Plus has the best selection of pool tables, game tables, shuffleboard tables, and more. And the best service in Central Ohio. Now is the time to reserve a table so you can unwrap years of family fun on Christmas morning. Everything you need for in-home and even backyard entertainment is at Billiards Plus. They are family owned and operated, and when you talk to the staff at Billiards Plus, you know you're talking to an expert who won't steer you wrong. No matter the season, Billiards Plus has you covered for all your indoor and outdoor entertainment needs. Kenny, Sarah, and the whole staff will always go above and beyond to give you the best customer service in the industry. Billiards Plus. Visit their showroom on Dublin Central Drive in Dublin. Thank y'all for making Locked On Buckeyes your first listen every day. For the first time this year, the CFP rankings will be unveiled, and they come out this evening, I believe at 7 Eastern. We'll find out what the committee is thinking about Alabama, about Ohio State, about Georgia, about Oregon, about IU, about Tennessee, about BYU, about Notre Dame, about a lot of schools, about Boise State. We're going to find out a lot about how the committee views a lot of these schools. They're going to put out the top 25, and I'm going to warn everybody, it's going to be easy to dive right in there and to be sucked into the committee and to be sucked into the rankings of saying they view us like this, they're correct. They view us like this, they're wrong. Don't worry about any of this nonsense. Literally, don't care about it. You can watch the show. You could even listen to or watch some recap shows breaking down the rankings. I ain't going to tell you not to do that. But what I will say is this. Don't dive into these rankings. Don't view them as gospel because they are not. And if you keep that mindset, you'll be a lot happier over the next few weeks. You'll be a whole lot happier because you're going to realize you're a smart Buckeye fan. And smart Buckeye fans realize if Ohio State takes care of business, everything else is going to take care of itself. That's it. Ohio State takes care of business. They're playing in the Big Ten championship game. They're going to beat Michigan. Like you beat Michigan, you went out, you're in the Big Ten championship game. You're already able to set out to accomplish 2 of your goals because if you went out, you already accomplished goal number 1, which is beating Michigan. So if you're able to accomplish goal number 2 by simply just taking care of business and not reading into the rankings, you're good. You're gravy. But also, if you win that conference championship, you're getting a bye. Now, that bye situation's cool. Like maybe Ohio State players want the bye in the first round. Maybe they don't. I don't know where you are, where the players are. Maybe you as a fan prefer win the conference championship and then have a game in Ohio Stadium. Cool. Like wherever you are with that, cool. That's up to you. But don't read into this, man. This stuff don't even matter. The coaches poll, the AP poll, the Sagarin rankings, any computer ranking, the Harris poll, whatever it is, don't even read into it. Don't nobody care. This stuff coming out tonight is literally just a build-up to the final selection show championships at the end of Champ Week. That's it. That's literally it. They're literally trying to feed you something, give you a little appetizer, give you a little taste of your entree, give you a little bit more, give you a little bit more. Then all of a sudden, when you get all of it, you're like, man, I like this or I don't like it. Well, when is that? After all of the conference championship games are played. I believe it's December 1st will be the day of that selection show after championship week where Big Ten, ACC, SEC, all those championship games are played. You got that Sunday. Well, they'll tell us what the top 12 is because that's really all what matters. This stuff don't matter. Stuff don't matter at all. This is a way for ESPN and for people to fill some space on TV. We're in the opening week of college basketball, and they're trying to fill space on TV with a ranking that don't even mean nothing? Yeah. Why? Because college football brings eyeballs. College football is a ratings thing. Some say the second biggest sport in America is college football to the NFL, bigger than the NBA, bigger than Major League Baseball, bigger than the NHL. It's college football. So, of course, if you're number 2 to the king of the country, which is football, of course you're going to try to do everything you can to filter that sport in on your airways. If you're ESPN, or if you're FS1 or CBS Sports Network, you're going to try to do everything you can to filter in as much NFL and to filter in as much college football because the ratings tell you you need to. Eyeballs are drawn to this sport. This stuff doesn't matter. Nobody cares. This is irrelevant right now. If Ohio State loses and they're 10-2, are they still want to get in? Yes. Will they host? That's up to the committee. Maybe they do. Maybe they don't. Doesn't matter. I mean, you would want Ohio State to host if they have to play in the first round. Absolutely you would. But what do you have to say at the end of the day? If they lose another game and they don't have a shot to control if they host or not, they didn't take care of business. They were having a different conversation at the end of the day. But just take care of business. You know how it is, man. You've been in places in your life where something comes up to try to get your attention. This is all the rankings is. It's just trying to get your attention. This has nothing to do. What they're talking about tomorrow is not a game. They're not talking about a guy driving back on 3rd and 8 to sling that thing down and get a 15-yard gain, first down, move the chains. They're not talking about that. They're talking about, well, at this point in the season, this is how we view the rankings. It all started with the BCS in 98, and I like the BCS. I prefer the BCS over this nonsense. I prefer a 4 or 6 or maybe even an 18 playoff over this nonsense. We got a 12, maybe go to 14. It's going to keep expanding because they want more money. And cool, as they expand, as they want more money, what's going to happen down the road? That first weekend the rankings come out, it don't matter. It doesn't matter at all. It's going to be hard, trust me, because people around are going to say, well, put Ohio State. Well, what if Ohio State currently in the AP poll, Ohio State is number 3. It's Oregon, Georgia, Ohio State, Miami. What if the committee puts Miami over Ohio State? Here we go again, just like in 02. They love them Hurricanes and they dissing them Buckeyes. What you got to do, man, just went out. It's literally just went out. All this stuff don't even matter. Why? Because if you went out, you're going to, this is even going to the championship game, Big Ten championship game. If you went out, you're playing Oregon again. You're winning that game, which is solidifying yourself to accomplish multiple goals. Also, it's also going to sit out for you to get a bye. You take care of business, the committee is forced. It's going to be forced to do exactly what they need to do, which is put Ohio State exactly where they belong. Don't read into the rankings. I'm going to say that every day and every week, maybe. Don't do it. Don't do it. It's a trap. It's a big trap. It's an easy trap to fall into. Don't fall into the trap of believing this stuff is gospel. What is gospel is what happens on Saturdays and what happens on that football field. That is stuff you can take to the bank and cash. You win, it's a good thing. Win out, you control your own destiny. Thank y'all for tapping into Locked On Buckeyes and making it your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On Big Ten podcast. My guy, Craig Sheeman, is the guy that puts the Big Ten first when everyone else overlooks it. Find Locked On Big Ten on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can follow me on Twitter at jstevens07. Send every email to jstevens317@gmail.com. This has been Locked On Buckeyes on a Tuesday. We'll see you next time.